Hello, I'm Reverend Rick, and it is my honor to be with you today. We really hope that this video is a blessing to you. And if it is, please consider making a donation. People watch our videos locally when they cannot necessarily come to church throughout the United States and the world. So please join us and click the link below and make a donation. Thank you, and let this be a blessing to you.
All right, let us prepare ourselves. If you put your hand over your eyes, I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today.
I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today.
And now your ears, I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today.
I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today.
And your hand over your heart. I extend my heart to receive the spiritual truth today.
I open my heart to receive the spiritual truth today.
Spiritual truth that I'm working with today is the spiritual truth that says your point of view will create your reality. Your point of view will create your reality. Did you ever notice that we as human beings, we are narrating everything we hear, see, taste, touch, and feel? We're always talking about it, we're evaluating it, we're judging it. You know, you go out and you go out to dinner and you have a glass of wine, and all of a sudden you're saying to yourself, well, it's a little fruity, and, aged well, but I can still taste the bark. It's not the best wine I ever had. You miss the whole experience of the wine. Now, I'm not talking about when you go to Sylvia's class and you learn about how to taste about wine. I'm talking about when you just want to have a glass or a piece of cake, and all of a sudden you're evaluating how buttery it is or how moist it is, and you totally miss the idea of what the cake tastes like. Because we're always narrating, judging, justifying what it is that we're experiencing in this life. The problem is we miss the experience because we're evaluating it all the time. Instead of taking our experience for what it is, we create a story around it based on what our beliefs are. And what our beliefs are, we're so attached to them. It's very hard to see beyond your set of beliefs because we felt that they've kept us safe. We feel like they keep us, we know what's going on. We know how to decode the world because we're decoding the world simply through our own belief system. But here's the thing. Our belief system creates filters. And when we see the world through filters, we begin to limit the possibility for success that's in our life. You know, we live in a land of pure potentiality. That's what Ernest Holmes says. That's what the great Eastern teachers say. We live in a land of pure potentiality, but we don't take advantage of it because we're limiting what we can see of it through our filters. Now, I want to ask you to take care today not to go brain dead over this simple spiritual truth. And the reason is because it's so simple, we sometimes say, oh, duh, Reverend Georgia, we've been coming here for a while, we get it. Our point of view creates our reality. I'm going to ask you that if the next 20 minutes you would be willing to have a beginner's mind, as if you never heard this idea in the first place. You never even got close to that idea that our point of view creates our reality. Bring to mind the last mistake that you've made in your life, that you consider a mistake. Not that somebody else told you it was a mistake, but you know, we've all done things that we thought, oh, whoa, why did I do that? Bring to mind that last mistake and ask yourself if perhaps it was a mistake because of your point of view. Maybe your attachment to your point of view was what caused that mistake. Maybe you made an agreement with your family or with your culture that certain things would look a certain way, and they became beliefs to you, and you created filters around that. Maybe your family or your culture said you had to have this job, or this relationship, or this house. But after a while of experiencing those things, you realized that it was a mistake in your life. And it brought you what we call now dis-ease. During this time, I'm not going to ask you not to have a point of view. That would be futile. It's impossible for us not to have points of view. But I am going to explore how attached we are to the points of view that we have, because our points of view will limit what it is that we can vision and how successful we think we can be. Today I am basing my work on the book called The 5 Levels of Attachment by Don Miguel Ruiz, Jr. Now, it's actually from the Toltic Tradition, and those of you who are familiar with the Toltic Tradition, it's a group of scientists and artists in Mexico, when Mexico was much bigger than it is today. It's when Mexico had Arizona, California, and Texas as well. And the artists and the scientists came together. What a lovely combination of minds, of thought. And they came together to study and to discuss how Great Spirit works in our life. Who is this thing? They wouldn't call it God, but that's what they meant. What is that? How does it work in our life? How can it make our lives better? And it's an oral tradition, so there was nothing written down at that time from the Toltic path. It was handed down from identified descendant to descendant to descendant. People who the Toltics felt could not only learn this, but teach it as well. Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote the beautiful book, The 4 Agreements, a very liberating book. If you haven't read it in a while, get it out, dust it off, read it again. And then his son wrote a book called The 5 Levels of Attachment, Don Miguel Ruiz, Jr. And he comments on this right in chapter 1 on today's spiritual truth. And what he says is this. He says, when we live in a, I've lost myself here. I'll get myself back. Maybe you'll just have to look at me for 20 minutes. All right, well, what he said was, you're stuck. Basically, he said a lot better than that, but I'm going to say you're stuck. When you're stuck in the levels of attachment that you're simply stuck in life. So we're going to get right to the 4 levels of attachment now. Rick, can you get me back into the center of the screen, please? It takes 2 of us to work this new system. Oh, there it goes. Okay. No. Stuck. All right, now we're good. We're very good. Oh, we're going to go to the old system. We're going to this system. That's all right. Thank you, Rick. I'm going to practice with this all week, so next week I'll come here and you won't even know I've got a board back there. But we're not there yet. We're not there yet. What he's saying in this book is, don't worry so much about having a point of view, but do worry or be aware or be conscious of what your attachment to your point of view, what level of attachment you have. And so we're going to talk about those right now. The first one is the authentic self. Your level of attachment to your authentic self. And this is actually an attachment we're striving for. This is one of the attachments that we want in this life. Because when we're attached to our authentic self, we're present with what is true for us. Not what's true for anybody else. Not what's true for our history, but what's true for us right at this moment. We can drink the glass of wine and we simply enjoy it. We don't have to evaluate it. We don't have to put it through a filter. We just simply enjoy it. The analogy that he uses, Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., to get us through these 5 levels of attachment is to go to a soccer game. And what he says, when you go to the soccer game at the first level of attachment, you go there, you know you're going to have a great time. You look at all of the great plays that were made on both sides, on both teams. And what brings you enjoyment is the great plays. It's not rooting for one or the other. It's just being present with what's going on. You're not taking sides. You simply, and when the referee blows the whistle at the end of the game, you leave and you're filled with joy. what would happen in our life? You know, 4th of July is coming up, and some of you are going to be going and spending picnic time with family on 4th of July. What would happen if you had this level of attachment to your authentic self, and you were just present with everybody, and you were rooting for everybody, and every conversation that anybody had, you were wonderful, and you were right there with it, and you weren't judging it, and you weren't sending it through your filters. You were just present with the most authentic self you can find, which is the self that's whole, perfect, and complete. The self that's the Christ presence on the planet. And if you were able to go to the 4th of July picnic that way, I promise you, when the last chicken wing has been eaten, you would leave that 4th of July a lot happier than if you were taking pot shots at your brother-in-law, or you were evaluating what your sister-in-law was saying. If you were just present with that place. The second one, and I will just say in Science of Mind, we call this level of attachment to the authentic self, to the Christ that is within us, to the whole, perfect, and complete person. We call that self-mastery. Lord Buddha would call that being woke, because we're simply aware of how perfect the world is and everything in it. The second level is preference. So this one, you still going to the same game, and now you're rooting for a team. You realize that by investing your emotions in a situation, it's a little more exciting, it's a little more enjoyable. So you find a team, you pick a team, and you're rooting for them. But you're not rooting against the other team, you're just rooting for the team that you have chosen to root for. And as a result of that, when you leave, your day is not shaped by victory or defeat. You're going to make a story up around victory and defeat, but it's not, your day isn't attached to it. Why? Because you know it's about the team, and it's not about you. And that's important in our lives. What would happen? What would happen if in this upcoming political year, we could choose a candidate and root for that candidate, but not talk bad about the other candidate? Now, I'm not there yet. I'm not there. But that's my goal. That's my desire, to be able to get there and see that at the end of the day, I'm going to accept the result. And if I can do that, I'm going to be a much, much happier person in my life. The third one is identity. And we're going back to the soccer game. And now this time, with the soccer game, we're a committed fan. And when the referee blows the whistle, and it's all over, we're either elated or we're disappointed. Because we forgot it's about the team. It's not about us. We've still put it us. We still prefer the team wins at this level of attachment. And we're kind of attached to the team. But it hasn't defined us. It has an impact on our identity at this level of attachment, of identity, but it hasn't defined us in our life. The third level, and this is the fourth level, and this is where life begins to take a slide downhill. And we begin to shut the door on that level of pure potentiality that surrounds us when we get into this one called internalization. We're back at the stadium, but now we're diehard fans. And the outcome will define what kind of day we have. It's all about us. We read the statistics about a player, and we're mad at that player because of the stats. If the team loses, we lost. We're so attached, we haven't been able to disengage from this. I think this level 4 attachment to identity is causing a lot of problems in our personal lives, in our family lives, in our work lives, and in the country. This level of forgetting it's not about them, it's about us, and making it about us. You know, when I went and told my parents I was gay, they made it about them. They made it about their parenting skills. They made it about the impact it would have on their religion if anybody found out. And as a result of that, in fact, it was so bad that I used to be politically active in San Francisco, and when the Gay Pride Parade time would come around, My mother would invite everybody she knew to dinner. I don't even know how they held everybody in the house for dinner, and she would always have her friends over on the night of Gay Pride Parade. Why? Because she didn't want anybody watching the 6 o'clock news. She wanted them active and away from the television set, in case her daughter was on the TV set talking about gay politics. Now, my brother and I used to get a lot of joy out of that story, but the problem with it is it limited the love that we could share with one another. It didn't limit the love we had for one another. It limited the love that we could share. The potential for greater love, for greater connection, because I found an authentic part of who I was diminished because of their level of attachment. So I invite all of you to look around your lives. Where might you have such a strong feeling about somebody that you're limiting the kind of love that you can share with them? Maybe it's cops. Maybe you have put cops out so far outside that you can't really love what's going on there. And I'm telling you, unless we have love for everybody, we're not going to be able to do the things that God sent us here to do. And the world's not going to be able to achieve the kind of level of success that it was meant to achieve in this life. The final one I want to talk about is fanaticism. Fanaticism. Now, this is where you go and you worship your team, and by God, they better win. And if they don't win, you're mad at them. And if anybody in your circle roots for that team, they're out. You're just, if they root for the team that is opposing your team, you've just unfriended them on Facebook. You've just told them they can't come to the 4th of July, whatever it is. You have just put them out. If your child roots for another, you've disinherited them. That's the kind of fanaticism that we're talking about. Now, it's unlikely that anybody in the church this morning, although I have done, well, okay. Most of us are not in the fanatic lane most of the time. Some of us get there. But you have people in your life, people in other religions who say, my way is the way, and there is no other way. There are people who, for all political things, and I have to say, I get that way. My way is the right way. And I don't really want to even hear about anybody else. Now, I'm not really on Facebook, so I don't unfriend people, but I probably would be an unfriender person. Fanaticism is what causes people to go to gay bars and shoot them up. It's what causes people to go to mosques and synagogues and churches and shoot them up. And what causes people to go into schools and shoot children. Now, we can call that mental illness, and I would agree with that, but it's more than mental illness. It's mental illness that's based in a fanaticism. It's an attachment. Our job, yours and mine, is to first stay out of that fanaticism, but to begin to pray for other people, that their worldview gets bigger. They're able to see people from a different point of view. So, Don, if you haven't got this book, get it. It's really a good book. 5 Levels of Attachment, Toltic Wisdom for the Modern World, Don Miguel Ruiz, Jr. I've given you a very brief look at what's in this book, the spiritual nourishment that's in this book. There's lots more. There are ways to move in through the attachments, to get yourself out of attachments. But the premise of the book really is not to not have attachments as much as it is to become aware of your attachments, because they are defining your success. They are limiting your potential. Now again, whenever I talk about attachment, I want to make sure that I'm not talking about becoming a detached person from your goals or your desires. We want everybody in this church to have desires, whatever they are. We just want you to be so attached to them that when they leave, you leave with them. So if you have a job that you're attached to and it leaves, I don't want you to go away. If you have an attachment to a person and they leave, I don't want you to go away. We want you to know that desire is great, it's good, it's what motivates us. It's what Ernest Holmes said runs the world. And it's a good thing, but we want you to know or be aware of the attachment that you have to the level of that desire. So let's take this message into prayer, knowing that there is a power for good in the universe, and it's one that is within us all the time. It never leaves us. It's always here. It's good. And when we can recognize the power that we have within us, there is no need for victims, for we are victors. And I give thanks for that. I release this word into the law, and together we say, and so it is.